So in case you're wondering how we come across our super special secret stash plants, there's one little secret to them. And yes, I'm standing on my back porch, and yes, I really have 3 grills out here. This is our high-tech way of actually growing out the unusual plants that you find in the store. It's about as basic as you can possibly get. Turn an old Lowe's paint bucket into a canister filter, ran that out through a uniseal to a length of PVC that we drilled into a stray bar with 2 pumps, both mag drives I happen to have laying around the house. The one in front is a mag 350 that runs an 18-watt UV sterilizer. The other one is a mag 2400, which is overkill but was free, and so I have throttled down with a ball valve that feeds the makeshift canister filter. And that's pretty much all there is to it. This particular one has CO2 running to it, gardening soil in the bottom, capped with pea gravel. So there's really nothing special as far as substrate. The reason it is out here is because I frankly ran out of light strips at home and didn't feel like putting money into a new one. So I decided it was time to experiment growing palm plants under natural sunlight, since they do indeed grow under natural sunlight in the wild. But this is really all it is. Our very delicate stash plants I grow in a separate container down in the basement. That is under a little bit more controlled environment where they do grow very quickly. But as far as the more temperature swing tolerant and chemistry tolerant plants go, this is where we're getting them. For those of you interested, this is the indoor portion of our super secret plant stash, which is slightly less super secret than it was a few minutes ago, apparently. But this is where we grow out our more delicate species, the more rare, unusual, hard to come by things. The kinds of plants that just aren't going to grow outside safely in Ohio, even in summer. These guys need a little bit more control as far as their water chemistry, temperature, lighting conditions, and whatnot. This one we do run much more sophisticated, although it does look just as half-assed because it's a project in my very unfinished basement, so it doesn't have to be as shiny as it would be if we were doing this for somebody else in their own home. But this is run by a 8-bulb T5, primarily with a couple different plant-growing Geisman bulbs, although I do have one actinic bulb, which does seem to actually bring out the reds a little bit nicer in the plants. That runs 10 to 12 hours per day. The tank is actually not an aquarium at all. This is an old 150-gallon Rubbermaid stock tank I had laying around in my basement. Here's the half-assed portion of it. The light was slightly too short for said tub, so I had to build a nice little 2x4 rig for it. It is functional. It is not on public display. It's fine. This one we do run CO2 very heavily, much heavier than you would normally need to do in a home setup. This is simply because we're trying to grow these out a lot faster so that we can bring these pieces in for you all. I also dose a series of dry fertilizers. Nitrate and phosphate get done about every 2 days. Trace elements are done 2 to 3 times a week. Works very well. They keep my levels nice and high. Again, much higher than the average home would need to be. The phosphates are running about 5.0. Nitrates are somewhere in the 40 to 50 range. We do not encourage this at home, simply because it's hard on a lot of the fish and tends to cause algae if you don't get it balanced just right. But in this particular case, it's so densely planted that it's really kind of necessary. And the fish load is very light. I've only got a couple of tiger autosynclus in here and a small school of farlowellas, just for algae control. The main animals in here are a combination of cherry and yellow fire shrimp, which have done really nicely for me in here. They've reproduced from a couple dozen to several hundred within a very short time. A lot of these plants you will not have seen in the store. I'm still kind of building up my personal collection. Eventually the hope is that these will all grow out well enough that I can bring them in for you, since you really can't find a lot of these anywhere else. Some of these are common. the star organese here. The Rotala bonsai is getting to be much more popular in the country since we've seen some tissue cultures imported from Europe recently. But things like these guys, the star organese species purple, you are not going to find most likely. Hedotus, Rotala, Gailai. Got a couple different species of Aerocolon and Trithuria growing out. We've got some lotus blossom, a really nifty cryptocrine, Cryptorosa maiden. It's a little bit torn up at the moment, just from getting knocked around, but it's healing up quite nicely. Gets a beautiful pink on it when it's really happy. Some unusual variations of Daunoi, a couple different Bucephalandras that another employee who should not be named gave me to play with, even though they're not my favorite thing, but can't tell that to plant nerds. We have a couple different types of Pantanal and Cuban lymphoma. Not lymphoma. Don't get Cuban lymphoma. There's no cure. Limnophila. Also wrong. Ludwigia Pantanal, Ludwigia cupa. Sorry. It was a long day. I'm doing this after we closed. Anyway, Persicaria, a couple different types of Alternanthera. Just got a hold of some yellow Ammonia. It's pretty short. You can barely see it in the background there. That'll be really nice when it grows out. At any rate, this is the slightly more refined version of what you saw outdoors. The substrate is the fluval shrimp and plant substrate that we carry in the store. I love this stuff. It works extraordinarily well. Everything seems to be rooting out really quickly for me. At any rate, this has been your Secret Stash Tour.